I'm 94 years old and I've been managing money since I bought my first stock at age 11. I've sat across from presidents, billionaires, and some of the sharpest minds in finance. And here's what I'm going to tell you today that most people won't. The biggest threats to your wealth aren't market crashes or bad investments. They're the people sitting right across from you at Thanksgiving dinner. They're the folks you golf with on Sunday. They're the distant relatives who suddenly remember your birthday when they hear you're doing well. Let me be straight with you. In 2024, Americans lost over $12 billion to fraud, and that number jumped 25% from the year before. But here's what nobody's talking about. Most identity theft doesn't start with some hacker in a basement halfway across the world. It starts with someone you know having information they shouldn't have. Every single day in this country, someone becomes a victim of identity theft every 5 seconds. That's faster than it takes you to read this sentence. Now, I've lived in the same house in Omaha since 1958, paid $31,500 for it. People ask me all the time why I don't live in some mansion, and the answer is simple. I don't need anyone knowing what I'm worth. I don't need the attention, the requests, or the problems that come with broadcasting your financial situation, and neither do you. Today, I'm going to tell you about 3 types of people you should never ever share your net worth or estate details with. These aren't criminals. Most of them aren't even bad people. But sharing this information with them is like leaving your front door wide open and putting a sign in your yard that says valuables inside. You're just asking for trouble. Before I dive in, let me give you some context. As of January 2026, the federal estate tax exemption sits at $15 million per person. That's $30 million for a married couple. The annual gift tax exclusion is $19,000 per person. Now, here's what matters. Whether you're worth $500,000 or $50 million, the principles I'm about to share apply to you because it's not about the size of your estate. It's about protecting what you've worked your entire life to build. The first person you should never tell about your net worth is your adult children who haven't demonstrated financial responsibility. Now, hold on before you get defensive. I love my kids. They're wonderful people. But loving someone and trusting them with sensitive financial information are 2 completely different things. I learned this lesson watching other wealthy families implode. I've seen it dozens of times over the decades. A parent shares their estate details with their children, thinking they're being transparent, building trust, and what happens? The kid who's been struggling with debt suddenly sees their parent as a retirement plan. The daughter who's been living paycheck to paycheck starts making decisions based on an inheritance she hasn't received yet. Here's the reality. In 2025, 77% of Americans have at least one financial regret. 22% regret not saving enough for retirement. 18% regret not saving for emergencies. When your children know you have substantial assets and they're struggling financially, human nature takes over. They stop pushing themselves. They start waiting. They make comments at family dinners about how well off you are. They hint about loans or early inheritances. But here's what's even more dangerous. They talk. Maybe they mention something to a spouse. That spouse mentions it to a friend. That friend knows someone who knows someone. Before you know it, you become a target. In the first half of 2025 alone, there were over 748,000 cases of identity theft reported. That's a massive increase from the previous year. I'm not saying keep your kids in the dark forever. What I'm saying is this: share details only when they've proven they can handle their own finances responsibly, when they've built their own emergency fund, when they're living within their means, when they understand that your wealth is yours to manage, not theirs to plan around. Until then, be general, be vague, keep the specifics private. Your estate plan should protect them, sure, but it should also protect you while you're alive. And that means managing information like you'd manage any other valuable asset with care, with strategy, and with clear boundaries about who gets access to what. Now, I want you to take a second and really let that sink in, because the next thing I'm going to share is where most folks lose their entire legacy. The second person you should never share your net worth with is your friends and extended family members. This one stings because we want to be open with the people we care about. We want authentic relationships. But here's what 6 decades of watching wealthy families has taught me. Money changes relationships faster than anything else on earth. I've watched it happen over and over. 2 friends close as brothers for 30 years. One does well, sells a business, has a great portfolio. The other one's getting by, okay, but nothing spectacular. They're at the golf course one Saturday, and the successful one mentions something about his asset allocation or his estate planning. Just casual conversation. 3 months later, the friendship's different. The one with less money starts making little comments. Must be nice to afford that. Easy for you to say the relationship you spent decades building gets poisoned by resentment you never even saw coming. Here's the data that matters. In 2024, 51% of Americans reported being scammed at some point in their lives. 36% lost money to those scams. The average loss in just the past year, $730. But here's what the statistics don't show. How many of those scams started because someone knew too much about someone else's financial situation? Your net worth is nobody's business. Not your college roommate, not your cousin, not the person you've known since third grade. Because even with the best intentions, people talk, they compare, they make assumptions about what you should do with your money. And sometimes they make requests. I've seen this play out in my own life. Early on, when I was building Berkshire Hathaway, I had friends and acquaintances who wanted investment advice, wanted loans, wanted me to bankroll their business ideas. Here's what I learned. The moment you reveal your financial success, you become everyone's potential solution to their problems. Your medical emergency fund becomes their business opportunity. Your retirement security becomes their investment capital. Let me tell you about portfolio diversification from a different angle. You diversify your investments to reduce risk, right? You don't put everything in one stock. Well, apply that same logic to information. Diversify who knows what. Your attorney knows about your estate plan. Your CPA knows about your tax strategy. Your financial advisor knows about your asset allocation. But none of them needs the whole picture, and your friends don't need any of it. The practical reason matters too. Studies show that people who share their net worth with friends often face uncomfortable situations. Expectations change. When you pick up the tab at dinner, people assume it's because you can afford it, not because you wanted to. When you don't, they wonder why you're being cheap. You can't win. And here's something critical. Fraud doesn't always look like fraud. In 2024, investment scams alone cost Americans over $5.5 billion. Many of those scams succeeded because the criminal knew their target had money to invest. They knew it because the victim had mentioned their portfolio at a social gathering or a friend of a friend had let something slip. The third person you should never tell about your net worth is anyone who hasn't signed a fiduciary responsibility agreement. Let me explain what that means in plain English. A fiduciary is someone legally required to act in your best interest. Your attorney has a fiduciary duty. Your certified financial planner should have a fiduciary duty. But here's what most people don't realize. Not everyone who gives you financial advice is actually required to put your interest first. I learned this principle early on, and it's guided every major financial decision I've made. Before anyone gets detailed information about my finances, they need to have a legal obligation to protect that information and use it only for my benefit. If they don't have that obligation, they don't get the information. Period. Now, this applies to more people than you might think. Your real estate agent, not a fiduciary. Your insurance agent, usually not. The financial advisor at your local bank, often not. These might be wonderful people who want to help you, but unless they're legally bound to put your interests first, sharing your complete financial picture creates risk. Here's why this matters. Right now, as of 2026, estate planning is more important than ever. The basic exclusion amount is $15 million per person, but that estate tax rate, if you exceed it, 40%. That means proper estate planning isn't just smart, it's essential for legacy protection. When you're working with professionals on something this important, clears throat, you need to know they're not just recommending what earns them the highest commission. You need to know they're required by law to recommend what's best for you. But here's the bigger issue I see all the time. Casual financial conversations with people who have no obligation to keep that information confidential. You're at a party, someone mentions they work in finance, and before you know it, you're discussing your 401k rollover strategy and your estate tax concerns with a stranger who could share everything you just said with anyone they want. In 2025, there were over 1 million reports of identity theft and over 323,000 cases of credit card fraud in just the first 6 months. These criminals are sophisticated. They're not just hacking computers, they're gathering information from social media, from conversations, from people who mention details they shouldn't, to people who have no reason to protect that information. Think about tax efficiency for a minute. You work hard to minimize your tax burden legally. You use tax-advantaged accounts. You time your capital gains. You work with your CPA on legitimate strategies to keep more of what you earn. But then you share details about your net worth with someone who's not bound by any confidentiality agreement. And suddenly all that careful planning is at risk because the wrong person knows too much. Your fiduciary responsibility as the person building this wealth is to protect it. That means being selective about who gets access to information. Your estate planning attorney, absolutely. Your certified financial planner who signed a fiduciary agreement, yes. The person you met at your neighbor's barbecue who does some financial consulting, absolutely not. Let me share something about how I think about this. Every single piece of financial information is like ammunition. In the right hands, it helps you hit your target. In the wrong hands, it gets used against you. Before you hand over that ammunition, you need to know exactly who you're giving it to and what their legal obligation is to use it responsibly. Now, let me tie this all together with something practical you can use tomorrow. Here's how you handle conversations when people ask about money. And trust me, they will ask. When your children ask, you say, "Your mother and I are comfortable and we've made arrangements to take care of everyone fairly. What matters more to me is seeing you build your own financial security." Then change the subject. Ask them about their emergency fund. Ask them if they're maxing out their 401k match. When friends or extended family bring it up, you smile and say, "I'm doing just fine. Thanks for asking. How are things with you?" If they push, you stay pleasant but firm. "I keep my finances private. It's just a policy I have. The people who respect boundaries won't push further. The ones who do, that tells you everything you need to know." When professionals without fiduciary duty ask questions that seem too detailed, you say, "I appreciate your interest, but I only discuss specific financial details with my attorney and my financial advisor who has a fiduciary duty to me." I'm sure you understand. If they're legitimate, they'll respect that immediately. Here's the framework I want you to remember. Financial privacy isn't about being secretive or dishonest. It's about protecting yourself and your family from very real risks. Every year I meet people who've learned this lesson the hard way. They shared information freely, thinking transparency was always positive. Then they dealt with family members who felt entitled to their money, or friends who became resentful, or criminals who targeted them because they knew there was money to steal. Save this video. Watch it again in 6 months, because I promise you someone's going to ask you about your finances. Someone's going to want to know what you're worth. And in that moment, you need to remember, the most powerful financial strategy isn't finding the best investment. It's protecting what you already have by controlling who knows about it. Let me give you some action steps right now. First, if you've already shared financial details you shouldn't have, you can't undo it, but you can stop making it worse. No more financial disclosure. Second, have a conversation with your spouse about who knows what. Get on the same page about privacy. Third, review who has access to detailed financial information. Make sure every single one of those people has a fiduciary duty to you or a legal obligation of confidentiality. Fourth, and this is important, talk to your estate planning attorney about privacy provisions in your estate documents. You can structure trusts and distributions in ways that keep information confidential even after you're gone. In 2026, with the new $15 million exemption, this is the perfect time to review your entire estate plan. Anyway, fifth, educate yourself about the tools available for legacy protection, irrevocable trusts, dynasty trusts, family limited partnerships. These aren't just about taxes. They're about privacy and control. They let you transfer wealth while maintaining discretion about exactly what that wealth is. Remember this, in 2024, consumers lost over $12.5 billion to fraud. That's a 25% increase from the year before. The number one payment method for fraud, bank transfers, and cryptocurrency. The criminals are getting smarter. They're using AI, they're using sophisticated social engineering, and they're specifically targeting people they know have money. Your defense is simple. Don't let them know you have money. Don't announce your success. Don't reveal your net worth. Don't discuss your estate plans except with the few professionals who legally must protect that information. I've been doing this for over 8 decades. I've made a lot of money and I've kept a lot of money. The keeping part is often harder than the making part because making money requires you to be smart and work hard. Keeping money requires you to be disciplined and private. Think about how you'd protect a valuable painting. You wouldn't leave it in your front yard. You wouldn't tell everyone who walked by that it's worth millions. You'd keep it secure. You'd insure it. You'd limit who had access to it. Your financial information deserves the same protection. Actually, it deserves more because unlike a painting, your financial information can actively hurt you if it gets into the wrong hands. Here's something I see over and over. People work their entire lives to build wealth. They're disciplined savers. They make smart investment choices. They live below their means. They do everything right. And then they casually mention their net worth at a family gathering. And it sets off a chain of events that creates problems for years. Maybe their adult child stops trying as hard at work because they figure they'll inherit money eventually. Maybe their friend becomes bitter and distant. Maybe someone at the party overhears and they become a target for financial predators. Any one of these outcomes can cost them more than any single bad investment ever would. The data backs this up. Studies show that people who discuss their wealth openly report higher levels of stress in their relationships. They face more requests for money. They deal with more complicated family dynamics. The transparency they thought would improve their relationships actually damages them because money changes things, always has, always will. Now, some of you might be thinking, Warren, you're a public figure. Everyone knows you're wealthy. How is this relevant? Here's the difference. People know I'm successful, but they don't know the details of my personal estate plan. They don't know exactly how my wealth is structured. They don't know my specific tax strategies. That information stays private with professionals who have a duty to keep it that way. And even with that level of privacy, I still deal with thousands of letters every year from people asking for money. I get investment pitches daily. I have people trying to connect with me through mutual friends, through charities, through business contacts. If I were less disciplined about privacy, that flood would be 10 times worse. You might think your situation is different because you're not a billionaire. You'd be wrong. The principles apply at every level. Whether you have 50,000 saved for retirement or 50 million in various trusts, the same human dynamics come into play. When people know about your money, the same risks emerge. The same relationship problems develop. Let me talk about capital gains for a second because this connects to everything I've been saying. When you invest wisely over time, you build substantial unrealized capital gains. Maybe you bought real estate that appreciated. Maybe you have stocks you've held for decades. That's wonderful. That's smart long-term investing. But here's what happens when people know about your successful investments. They want you to sell and share. They don't understand the tax implications. They don't respect your long-term strategy. They just see money they think you should be spending differently. This is especially important for business owners. If you build a valuable company, your net worth on paper might be substantial, but it's not liquid. It's tied up in equipment, inventory, accounts receivable, goodwill. When people know you're worth millions, they don't understand or care that selling the business to get cash would destroy everything you built. They just see the number and make assumptions. I've watched business owners get pressured by family members to sell profitable businesses early, to liquidate at bad times, to make poor decisions with their companies because someone thought they should have more liquid wealth to share. Those family members wouldn't have applied that pressure if they didn't know the business was valuable. The information itself created the problem. The same thing happens with retirement accounts. You spent decades building your 401k, making smart contribution choices, managing your asset allocation carefully. Then a family member who's been less disciplined learns you've got $1 million in retirement accounts, and suddenly you're expected to help with their problems. Never mind that those accounts are meant to support you for potentially 30 years of retirement. Never mind the penalties for early withdrawal. They see the number and think you're sitting on excess cash. Here's what I want you to understand. Protecting information is protecting assets. When you keep your financial details private, you're not being selfish or secretive. You're being smart. You're exercising sound fiduciary responsibility for your own wealth. You're ensuring that your money works for you and your true priorities, not for everyone else's emergencies and requests. Think about the new estate tax exemption. Again, 15 million per person, 30 million for married couples. If you're anywhere close to those numbers, you need professional guidance on estate planning, but that professional guidance only works if you're selective about who else knows the details. Because if your estate is worth 10 million and your extended family knows it, you've just created years of future conflict over how that money gets distributed when you're gone. I've seen siblings stop talking to each other because one thought they deserved more of an inheritance. I've seen adult children contest wills because they felt slighted. I've seen family businesses torn apart because multiple heirs had different visions and couldn't agree. You know what makes all of that worse? When everyone knew exactly what was at stake financially before the distribution happened, the knowledge created entitlement. The entitlement created conflict. Contrast that with estates where the details stayed private until the will was read. The beneficiaries had no time to build up resentment or expectations. They received what they received, often grateful, without years of speculation and planning around money that wasn't yet theirs. Here's my challenge to you. Starting today, treat your financial information like the valuable asset it is. Guard it, protect it, share it only when absolutely necessary, only with people who have a legal duty to protect it, and only in amounts that serve your specific needs. If you've got adult children, start teaching them about building wealth rather than inheriting it. Share your values around money, share your work ethic, share your discipline and your strategies, but keep the specific numbers to yourself until they've proven they can handle their own finances responsibly. If you've got friends asking questions, stay warm but firm, keep the relationships, lose the financial disclosure. Real friends don't need to know your net worth to value your friendship. Music. If knowing your finances changes the friendship, it wasn't as solid as you thought. If you're working with professionals, make sure they're the right professionals with the right legal obligations. Don't settle for someone who's just friendly or convenient. Hire fiduciaries. Work with people who must put your interests first by law. And most importantly, stop feeling guilty about privacy. Our culture sometimes treats financial privacy like you're hiding something wrong. You're not. You're protecting something right. You're protecting decades of hard work. You're protecting your family's future security. You're protecting relationships from the toxicity that money discussions often create. The wealthy families that stay wealthy across generations do a few things consistently. They teach financial responsibility. They use professional advisors. They structure their estates carefully. And they keep their financial details private. That last one is just as important as the other three. I'll leave you with this. I'm 94 years old. I've seen a lot. I've made plenty of mistakes. But keeping my financial details private, sharing them only when necessary and only with the right people, that's not a mistake I've made. And it's protected me, my family, and my ability to use my wealth the way I think best for over 70 years. Take this seriously. Think about who knows what about your finances. Make changes where needed. Set new boundaries. Have uncomfortable conversations if you have to. Your future self will thank you, your family will thank you, and your wealth will stay where it belongs, under your control, working towards your goals, protected from people who have no business knowing about it in the first place. Subscribe to this channel if you want more straight talk about money, investing, and building wealth that lasts. And remember, the most powerful wealth strategy isn't finding the next big investment. It's protecting what you've already built by being smart about who gets access to information. Guard your privacy. Guard your wealth. They're connected in ways most people never understand until it's too late.